Hi, I'm Laurie Power, Director of Evangelization and Discipleship at Christ the Redeemer Parish, and welcome to Talking Saints. I'm here today virtually once again with my co-host Pete Sanchez, reporter for the Catholic Star Herald, and we will spend just a couple minutes talking about a particular saint, his life, and how his example can inspire us, because as Pope Francis reminds us, to be saints is not a privilege for the few, but a vocation for everyone. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing all right, Laurie. I'm very excited to talk about the saint because I hope he can find a few books that I misplaced.
Uh-oh. He always comes through, so I think he will.
Yes. And that should give us a clue to maybe some listeners, the patron saint of lost things.
Yes, we are, of course, talking about Saint Anthony of Padua.
Yes, you said Padua? Or
Padua? I don't know.
Padua? Or
I've never been there.
No, I've never been there either. I've heard Padova.
I don't know.
Only spelled Padova.
Oh.
I've heard that too. So, so we're excited. I'm excited to talk about this.
I know. And really, I mean, he's known as the patron saint of lost things, but he has a pretty fascinating life story apart from that. Most people don't even know it. Don't know his little contribution to the church and to the world.
And not only that, but like the saints that we talk to frequently on this program, his life was just full of grace. There were a lot of things that happened that kind of set his journey in motion.
That's true.
So how about you start us off, Laurie?
Sure. So he was born Fernando in 1195, which was about 13 years after St. Francis, and he was born in Lisbon, Portugal. So he was not Italian, as we would expect, but he became associated with Italy because that's where he really ministered and preached. So he was born to prominent parents in Lisbon, and he was educated by priests there, and at the age of 15, he entered the Augustinians and entered a period of really intense study and prayer. But his life took a pretty crucial turn when the bodies of the first 5 Franciscan martyrs were returned from Morocco. So the Franciscans were a new order at this time, but they had gone to Morocco to preach, and the Sultan even allowed them all the way into Morocco, but despite warnings, they kept preaching, and they were ultimately captured and tortured and beheaded. And their bodies were brought back in the presence of the queen and a huge crowd, and they were brought in procession to his monastery. And he was so moved by this that he actually sought out the Franciscans, went to a little friary nearby and said, "I would gladly put on the habit of your order if you would promise to send me as soon as possible to the land of the Saracens, that I may gain the crown of the holy martyrs." So he actually wanted to be martyred and was excited about that idea and was ready to join the Franciscans if they would let him go on foreign mission where he was likely to be martyred. Go ahead, Pete.
No. What were you going to say?
No, they did accept him and say, okay. I guess they appreciated that zeal.
Well, I felt bad. The Augustinians, I don't think they were happy.
Well, that's true.
They let him go. So
yeah, eventually they did. I mean, I guess it was God's will,
Yeah.
He was so on fire to.
I mean, just that, to may gain the crown. He took the name of Anthony, presumably after one of the individuals we talked to, Saint Anthony of Egypt, because it turned out the Franciscans there had dedicated a hermitage to Saint Anthony of Egypt. So kind of that's where he got the name. And I talked earlier about, the moments, the seminal moments in his life, and that was one of them when he saw the bodies of the martyrs. But he became very sick and sent to Portugal. But what happened is the ship he was on was blown off course to Sicily, where he then to Tuscany, and then he was assigned to San Paolo there. And then this other thing happened. We had the Augustinians, then we had the Franciscans, and now the Dominicans come in the picture.
Yeah. He really wanted to. He was on his way to Morocco, but as you said, he was too sick to even finish the trip. So they were sending him back, and his ship got blown off course east. So that's how he ended up in Italy, which is fascinating. He wanted to go be a martyr, and God said, "No, you're needed locally in Italy." And the friars there, who didn't even know him, they took him in and they nursed him. And even when he was still sick, he wanted to go to this famous gathering that later became known as the Chapter of Mats, because they had 3,000 friars there and they couldn't house all of them. So they were just sleeping on mats. So the Chapter of Mats. And because he wasn't really known to them, they didn't give him an assignment, but he asked to go to northern Italy. And he was able to just sort of live a quiet life of prayer and penance and live in hermitage until, I think this is the story that you're about to tell, he was at an ordination, right, of Franciscans and Dominicans.
I didn't know about I'm talking about his prayer book.
How he became known as patron of lost things, or another story?
Oh, that was, tell the ordination piece.
Okay, so this is kind of another, you mentioned like seminal moments. So after the ordination, they were at a meal, and the provincial, who was sort of like the leader, asked for a short sermon, something simple from one of the friars there. And most of them said no, they didn't want to preach. But ultimately they prevailed upon Anthony to start preaching, and they thought he was uneducated. They had no idea that he had studied with the Augustinians, because he lived very simply. Like, he would work in the kitchen, he was obedient to whatever they asked him to do, so they had no idea he was this well educated. So he began to preach, and they saw this fire in him and knowledge and just holiness of his life. And all of a sudden, his quiet life of prayer and penance, he had to exchange that to become a preacher. Because they saw that gift in him. And so he got a little bit of time to pray and have a life of solitude, but as soon as this sermon happened, that was over for Anthony, I think.
He kind of blew up, but you're right, Laurie, it tells you something about the life of simplicity and how we should follow. I mean, that was one of his hallmarks, just the quiet, humble way that he lived. But when he needed to, he spoke of Jesus. He had that fire in him that he quietly had it in there, but when the going got tough, he was able to say what needed to be said. Absolutely. And one of the things another story was, I was getting to his book of prayers that he had, that he taught his students with. And it turned out that this is how he became the patron saint of lost things. His book was stolen by a wayward student who then not only took the book, but then left the order.
That's right.
And Saint Anthony prayed for him, and the man came back, returned the book, and returned to the order. So
it was a double answered prayer there. And the novice came back.
And it's important to say he's not only the patron saint of lost things, but lost situations, lost souls, you can say. So anything, you can pray to him for conversion of individuals. If you have family members, I know, I have family members who have lost their faith, and I'm going to pray to Saint Anthony of Padua now.
Yeah.
I love this too. We didn't say this at the beginning, but he was declared a doctor of the church.
That's right, because of his preaching. So apparently he taught. So Francis heard about his debut, we could say, when he started preaching, and he found out that he was educated. And the Franciscans were a little bit weary of too much education, because they felt like it would lead to pride in the friars. But they also knew if the Franciscans were going to go out and preach and counter the heresy at that time, they needed a good foundation in theology. So Francis asked Anthony to teach the friars sacred theology, but we don't have any of his the classes that he taught. We don't have those recorded or the lectures that he gave, but we do have his sermons, which were so profound yet simple enough that even people who had no education or who were just young or very simple could still understand his message. And I think that's one of the reasons he was declared a doctor of the church, as you mentioned. I think that happened in 1946.
By Pope Pius the 12th.
Yes, so long after his canonization, they recognized, his teaching was so succinct that they wanted to declare him a doctor of the church.
And he was canonized less than a year after he died.
Yes, I think the Pope knew of him and knew of his holiness and some of the miracles that surrounded his life, that he was canonized pretty quickly.
Well, can I bring? Do you know about the fish?
Oh yeah, tell that story.
I love this story. This is kind of unbelievable, but it's awesome. So he would preach to everybody, and when I mean everybody, I mean the nature. And he was known for preaching to the fish. He would.
Apparently, the heretics wouldn't listen to him. So yeah, he went out to the river and started preaching to the fish. And when they came to the surface, people said, "Whoa, something's different about this person," and then they started to listen.
Exactly. I think that might have been the first time people were motivated by the fish to do something. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe if I'd seen, hey, the fish are listening to him, maybe he's got something interesting to say.
That's true.
So that is fascinating. That is fascinating because he literally preached the gospel to everyone,
Absolutely.
to all.
He followed that gospel mandate, preached to all creation, indeed.
And what is the rule on animals? What's the Catholic doctrine on animals in heaven?
I'm not touching that one, Pete.
No? Well, no, I really don't know. That's what I was asking you.
I don't know if there's an official teaching.
Okay.
I could tell you what Aquinas would say, but that would probably make people unhappy. So, but Aquinas was wrong on occasion. So, but Aquinas didn't think animals have substantive souls, like souls that could exist apart from their bodies or their material beings. So he would not say that there are animals in heaven. But we don't know. We'll find out when we get there.
Yeah, well, we should talk about something else before this is our last podcast. We don't want to preach. We don't want to be excommunicated here, right?
That's true.
But the other thing I love, Laurie, is there are some saints, their bodies are uncorrupted. Basically, uncorrupt means that their body doesn't decay like a normal. In Anthony of Padua's case, his body was exhumed, and the only part of his body that was uncorrupted was his tongue. Because that's what he used to fulfill his ministry.
Exactly.
It's very interesting, and I think I forget. Is that tongue somewhere else?
I was going to ask you. I'm not sure. I'm sure it is. I'm sure someone in Italy wanted it. The people of Italy with devotion to him.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some cult around that. Yes.
If someone can enlighten us, send us a message or an email or a phone call.
There you go.
We'll be sure to give you full credit on the next one of these.
So one more story about him. Do you know the story about the mule and the Blessed Sacrament?
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, this is a good one. So Anthony was having conversations with this man who did not believe in the true presence of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. And the man was being very stubborn. So, because Anthony could preach and explain it beautifully, but he would not believe. So St. Anthony said to him, "If the mule you ride adored the body of Christ in the Eucharist, would you believe in the truth of the Blessed Sacrament?" And the man said, "Well, okay." So he said, the man said, "Okay, we're going to make this a little bit harder. I'm going to starve the mule for 3 days, and then I will put hay under his nose right near him, and then you can bring the Blessed Sacrament into his presence, and we'll see what happens." So sure enough, for 3 days, Anthony himself decided to fast as well. And they brought the mule out, and St. Anthony brought the Blessed Sacrament out. And even though the hay was right there in front of him, the animal turned from the hay, went to the Blessed Sacrament, and literally bent his front legs and kneeled in adoration before the Blessed Sacrament. And of course, the man at that point came to believe in the truth that Jesus was truly present there. So it might be pious legend, but beautiful story about St. Anthony. And miracles happened all throughout his life. So I believe that could certainly have happened.
We're not going to get any angry emails or texts from people upset that Anthony starved the mule for 3 days.
It wasn't Anthony. It was the man who didn't believe. He was the one who said, I'm going to make it harder here.
Blame the heretic, right?
Yeah, there you go, right? Well, he wasn't a heretic after that.
He came to believe, but the mule, God bless the mule, for that story. No, that is fantastic, Laurie. Yeah, I mean, there's all these. I love all this with all these saints. There's always those kinds of stories that are passed down, and
Anthony was completely confident that the mule would recognize Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. So we just have to have faith like that, indeed.
We do, and live in simplicity, and have a tongue like him. You know, we have to pray to have that zealous tongue, if you will, like him, and
charitable as well.
Yes. So we may gain the crown.
Yes.
As he said, and I think in artwork he's depicted with a book of prayer, lilies, and the infant child of Jesus.
Yes.
And we even have a church in Camden, Saint Anthony of Padua.
We do, yes.
Yeah, beautiful church if you ever get a chance. And Laurie, I think, do you have anything more to add about this amazing saint?
I don't think so. I do have a prayer that we can ask for his intercession right now. So let's pray. O holy Saint Anthony, gentlest of saints, your love for God and charity for his creatures made you worthy when on earth to possess miraculous powers. Encouraged by this thought, we implore you to obtain our requests. O gentle and loving Saint Anthony, whose heart was ever full of human sympathy, whisper our petitions into the ears of the sweet infant Jesus, who loved to be folded in your arms. The gratitude of our hearts will ever be yours. Amen. Saint Anthony,
pray for us.